Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. When Caitlyn Jenner announced her transition in 2015, headlines across the US and the UK held the act up as stunning and brave. This seems to be when the regressive PC culture that we're all familiar with went from being something silly to something far more sinister. 2015 to 16 saw social justice warriors taking a more aggressive stance in their beliefs. The US has seen legal battles fought over which toilets trans people should use, with some activists going so far as to say that the words ladies and gents in themselves are transphobic. Trans people who'd been using their preferred bathroom for years without issue could only observe silently from a distance as trans activists tried to throw the spotlight on them, claiming to be fighting to earn them a right they'd never felt the need to fight for themselves. Here in the UK, city councils have been asking parents to fill in their 4-year-old children's preferred gender on school registration forums. It makes you wonder if some of them actually pull their children away from their games to ask them what gender they are, or if, as we shall see later, some choose the gender they wish their children presented as in order to appear more progressive. Most social media sites now offer dozens of gender options for their users, and these sites are held up as a step in the right direction. And of course there is Bill C-16, which aims to add gender identity and expression to the list of prohibited grounds of discrimination in Canadian human rights. Psychology professor Jordan Peterson continues to refuse gender-neutral pronouns for non-binary students, and students and faculty members continue to accuse him of hate speech. So this is where we stand as 2016 draws to a close. Children barely old enough to attend school are being dragged into gender politics. University students now demand special pronouns, and anyone who opposes this is deemed hateful and bigoted. A man can now put on a wig if he feels so inclined to put in some effort, and swagger his way into the ladies' room applauded as a hero in a world of bigotry. It's clear to me that transgenderism has moved from being a serious condition to nothing more than a label for a growing number of people who validate their existence by claiming everyone who disagrees with them are denying it. It's concerning then that more people are not voicing their apprehension about the staggering surge in young children coming out as transgender. Even infants, we're being told, can come out as trans or non-binary. From 2012, a couple decide to raise their child as gender neutral to avoid stereotyping. This was to allow the infant's real personality to shine, and they referred to their child as the infant, only allowing him to play with gender-neutral toys. For the first 5 years of his life, Sasha alternated between girls' and boys' clothes, with his mother believing that stereotypes are harmful and fundamentally stupid, and that gender affects what children wear and what they can play with, and that shapes the kind of person they become. Today, Sasha wears a girl's shirt as part of his school uniform and has been banned from sporting combat trousers. He's also encouraged to wear flowery tops at the weekends, and amazingly, his mother claims that she wouldn't push him in any direction. It would seem to me that that's precisely what she's doing. The thing is, stereotypes are only harmful when they're applied to people who don't actually fit those stereotypes. It's a stereotype that little girls like playing with dolls. But most little girls do actually like playing with dolls. If you deny your child the ability to play with the toys or dress in the clothes that you deem too stereotypical, then you're denying that child, your child, the freedom that they need to find themselves. You are the harmful presence in the child's life. Dr. McDermott says we have no way of knowing if raising a child gender neutral will have long-term consequences because there's very little research on the topic at this point. So it's good to see that there are parents out there willing to turn their own kids into guinea pigs then. This is the story of a 5-year-old boy who lives as a girl, the youngest case of gender identity disorder here in the UK. Apparently tying his hair in pigtails and slapping a tutu on this boy is enough to say he's living as a female. Zach Avery, just 5, has been living as a girl for more than a year after he apparently refused to live as a boy after he turned 3. Live as a boy here presumably means that he refused to wear stereotypically boys' clothing. Adults who don't know the difference between gender and dress sense should not fucking procreate. Just saying. So, Zach was 3 when he refused to live as a boy, choosing to wear pink dresses and ribbons in his hair. This being because he has gender identity disorder, apparently. His mother said he used to be a normal boy who loved Thomas the Tank Engine, but suddenly at the end of 2010 he decided he wanted to live as a girl. He became obsessed with Dora the Explorer and started dressing in girls' clothing. His parents took him to the doctors and he was diagnosed by NHS specialists with GID. His mother said that when he was 3 he told her, "Mummy, I'm a girl." It's nice to see that this, coming from a toddler who's obsessed with Dora the fucking Explorer, was enough to convince this woman, and even more mind-blowing that this was enough to convince doctors just because this little boy was dressed like a girl. Presumably here it's the mother that dresses her son. Zach's mother says his school changed the toilets for Key Stage 1 pupils to unisex and they all address him as a girl. And of course his mother adds that his uniform is female but still neutral. This article seems to be describing the gender of the clothing rather than the gender of the child. The mother says, Zach just wants to be a little girl and he's very happy with his long blonde hair, pink and red bedroom and wardrobe full of girls' clothes. He likes playing with his sister's old toys, but he still loves Doctor Who and playing with his brother. And we still put neutral clothes in his wardrobe if he ever decides he wants to wear them. People need to be aware of this condition because it's very common, but even many family support workers have never heard of cases in children. There are people out there, but they don't want to talk about it. It sounds to me like this woman just wants another daughter. She has a son, a daughter, and then she has this kid who she wants to turn into another daughter. So she's attempting to transform her little boy into a girl, and she thinks that ribbons in his hair and pink paint on his bedroom walls will do that. Figures from the Tavistock and Patman Foundation have revealed that 165 children have been diagnosed with GID in 2012. A spokesperson said 7 children under the age of 5 were diagnosed in 2011, making Zach one of the youngest. The Tavistock Clinic had 97 referrals in 2009 and 2010, and 139 in 2010 to 11. And 165 referrals were made by the time this article was released in 2012. This may reflect greater awareness, which begs the question if the awareness is on the part of the parents forcing this on their kids, rather than on the part of the kids themselves. I'll let you guess where my opinion lies. You see, there's money and fame in having a gender-morphing child. Books like Raising My Rainbow by Laurie Durran, which is an account of how she raised her gender-variant son, her words not mine, or My Princess Boy by Cheryl Kilo Davis, which is a story inspired by her son, who likes dresses and pink and sparkly things and wearing tiaras. They're becoming quite trendy, these stories, and you'll notice that most of these books are centred around mothers raising their sons as feminine, and how brave and inspiring these women are portrayed in parenting circles. Personally, I don't see child abuse as anything to be celebrated, but I guess I'm just not with it these days. Dr. Jack Drescher is a clinical associate professor of psychiatry and a member of the DSM-5 workgroup on sexual and gender identity disorders. He's a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, and this is what he has to say. Most people establish a gender identity at a very young age. There are exceptions, but they are not very common. When gender dysphoria does appear before adolescence, most psychiatrists call this gender identity disorder of childhood, or GIDC. The diagnosis applies to children, in some cases as young as 3, who tell their parents that they are not the boys or girls that their parents believe them to be. GIDC is relatively rare, and children whose gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is even rarer. Existing research indicates that children with GIDC grow out of gender dysphoria, do not grow up to be transgender, with most of them growing up to be homosexual. Just something to consider as we proceed. We arrive now in 2016, where the number of children referred to the NHS with gender identity issues has increased significantly. Details were revealed after a 5-year-old Nottinghamshire boy recently returned to class as a girl. The Gender Identity Development Service said 969 under-18s have been referred in the UK in 2015 to 16, including nearly 200 aged under 12. This compares to just 94 between 2009 and 2010. The statistics also showed that 1 3-year-old and 3 4-year-olds were referred to GIDS since April last year. Research published in the Netherlands suggests that for some young people who make an early social transition, it may be difficult to detransition if their gender identity develops in another direction. In terms of general increase in referrals, the GIDS say there could be a number of reasons, but increased awareness and acceptance of gender issues, particularly via the media and social networks, was a likely factor. Bernard Reed from the Gender Identity Research and Education Society, which is a charity which works to improve the lives of gender non-conforming people, said many young people still did not feel confident speaking about gender issues because society is not often supportive in such cases. Are they not supportive? Or are they just asking too many questions? We're talking about children's lives here. People want to be sure that they're not pushing their kids towards something that may cause distress and confusion later in life. This isn't a matter of not being supportive, it's a matter of being careful. Here we have a 14-year-old who was born female, but never felt like one. The unease started at the age of 10 and only intensified as they got older. They are one of a growing number of British children coming out as transgender, but this rise has fueled fears that children may be labelled as transgender when they're just gay or lesbian or curious about exploring their gender. This article repeats a lot of what I've already discussed, but I included it because of this. For older children, there is an option to take testosterone for those transitioning from female to male, and estrogen for those transitioning from male to female, but both treatments come with risks. And I will make a separate video on that in the future. Experts say that puberty blockers can decrease bone density and hormone therapy can lead to infertility. These are not things that should be pursued lightly. So while the very young children that I've discussed so far won't be on blockers, consider this. If they have lived their entire childhoods being told that they are transgender, that they're so brave for doing this trans thing, is it not possible at least that they will feel the need to start blockers as soon as possible? If the parents are pushing this onto their kids, is it not possible that they will convince their children to go on blockers even if the child clearly doesn't understand the consequences? Is the well-being of these children, whether they're 3 or 13, worth endangering because calling out their parents is politically incorrect? If your reply is anything other than, "Of course not," then you are supporting child abuse. I'll finish up this video with a story from October. Boy living life entirely as girl removed from mother's care by judge. A 7-year-old boy who was living life entirely as a girl was removed from his mother's care after a ruling by a High Court judge. Mr. Justice Hayden said the woman had caused her son significant emotional harm, and he criticised local authority social services who were responsible, or were supposed to be responsible, for the youngster's welfare. The mother had claimed that the boy expressed disdain for his penis, but the judge said that he considered that the mother had caused significant emotional harm to her son in her active determination that he should be a girl. He said that the boy was now settled well in the care of his father and his father's partner, saying, "I've been told that the father and his partner were shocked when they first saw the boy by the extent to which he appeared to be a girl, both in appearance and in mannerisms." However, what was striking is how well the boy had settled down. He says, "I had noted from reports that the boy had become interested in Power Rangers, SpongeBob, superheroes, and is constantly finding new interests. And it's striking that most of the boy's interests are male-orientated. I am entirely satisfied, both on the basis of the reports and the father's evidence at this hearing, that he has brought no pressure on this boy to pursue masculine interests. The boy's interests and energy are entirely self-motivated." All children's interests should be entirely self-motivated. That's the beauty of childhood. If you want a daughter, have one or adopt one. Don't force your boy to become one. The issue of this immense rise in transgender children is not about acceptance, it's not about inclusiveness, it's about forcing gender politics down the throats of the most innocent and pure among us. That, ladies and gentlemen, is child abuse. And if you don't call it out because of political correctness, then you are just as guilty as the people forcing this on their children.